Hello, everybody. Welcome along again to another episode of Health Wealth Podcast. Going to have a very interesting episode today. I have got Ricky Du Plessis with me to have a chat about his story, his background, his health journey that he had, his book he's written about it as well, and just get into some of the details around nutrition. So, first of all, Ricky, how are you doing today?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Ryan. I'm excited to join you on the podcast here. So thank you for the opportunity. And yeah, been good. Been a busy week, but happy to get to the end of it.
Good. Yes, always. Yeah, it's good. So I think a great place to start is the beginning.
Mhm.
So if you want to just take us back to wherever your journey into health and nutrition really started for you.
Yeah, so mm, always been a very active guy. Had a few bouts of serious injury through my late teens. Did the ACL on my left leg. Had to have that replaced, and that was the first time in my life where I noticed that I couldn't just eat whatever I wanted because I absolutely ballooned. But then sort of got active again off the back of that, redid it again a year later, and then made do without since then. But life being what it is, the elixir of youth sort of starts to wear off as you go through your 20s and head towards your 30s, and then through your 30s that catches up with you. And it was early 2018 where I had to sort of face the facts that I couldn't eat whatever I wanted anymore. I was in the gym, I was working out, as active as a sedentary day job and married life with young kids would allow me to be, but I was just getting fatter and fatter and fatter, as well as having a decent level of muscle mass, and had to face the fact that something was wrong. So I love food. Like, I'm a big foodie. I've been cooking for myself since I was about 11. I really have a good love for food, and the thought of having to starve myself to lose weight scared the hell out of me, and I just didn't want to do it. So that, thankfully, drove me down the avenue of trying to look for dietary approaches which would allow me to eat until I was satiated, not have to starve myself, but still get the goals that I wanted. And along that sort of journey, I stumbled across the world of low carb nutrition, keto specifically. And I thought, well, here we go. I'll give this a try. I gave it a 3-month trial. And long story short, we're sort of 5.5, nearly 6 years down the line now. And yeah, just went deep down that rabbit hole. So I did extremely well on keto across the whole of 2018 and into early 2019. Lost a ton of weight, got into really good shape, started to discover some health issues that I had previously not known. For example, I have IBS, caused by a gluten intolerance. I thought that the stomach cramping and the severe gas was just part of everyday life. I thought it was normal. I'd had it for that long, as long as I can remember. I've had that issue, and the gift of hindsight being 2020, I can sort of look back and go, yeah, okay, it's with a big bowl of pasta or something that's really gluten heavy like that. Like, I would then suffer for the next sort of 8, 9 hours. Um, but like I said, I thought that was normal until it went away. And then I sort of like, it's like, wow, like, this is what digestion should be like. Like, I shouldn't be in pain, and I shouldn't have all this gas, and I shouldn't be clearing rooms. Like, this is unheard of. So there was that. Also struggled with chronic lower back pain for many, many, many years. Had sort of been down the route of seeing the doctor, getting a referral, seeing an orthopedic surgeon, getting steroid injections in the back, getting all sort of scan work done, and had them turn around to me and go, "Wow, it's just mechanical low back pain. It's there's nothing we can do for you." Um, but in my journey into sort of low carb nutrition, I discovered that, especially if I was fasting, so if I would go through an extended fast from sort of 48 hours onwards, the pain's completely gone. Like, I can bend, I can touch my toes, I can do everything pain free, even first thing in the morning, where I used to struggle for the first couple of hours in the morning. Like, putting on my socks was a mission because of how sore my back was. And that led me to sort of start to understand that, okay, maybe there's something dietary there. Maybe there's something that's causing inflammation around the facet joints of the lower lumbar spine. And that's what the real issue is. Maybe I haven't done any structural damage as such. And then tweaking my diet more and more and more, started to eliminate the inflammatory stuff. And yeah, it went away. And it'll come back if I eat badly. Like, it'll come back with vengeance. But yeah, if I eat correctly, it's gone. So yeah, sort of didn't realize I had certain dietary caused health issues, but discovered them along the way just by cleaning up the diet. And I've done really well since. I have fallen off it a couple times, across 2019 into sort of like mid 2019 into 2020. Fell completely off because I was finishing off a master's degree, and being a full-time worker, full-time dad, husband. I just didn't have time to cook for myself, so I ate for convenience, and I knew sort of what I was getting myself into. I knew that I'd suffer for it, but I had limited time. I had to finish my dissertation, and yeah, priorities were priorities. Put all the weight back on, had all the symptoms and the issues come back. Suffered for that, ballooned again, and then the nice thing was, during that time, I had learned to love the science aspect of all of this. And I would sit and I'd geek out during the workday where I'm not on conference calls and I'm not doing anything that facilitates or requires talking to another person. I'll sit and listen to podcasts. And I geeked out the entire time through. Stumbled across carnivore, and I thought, that sounds good, sounds interesting. Let me give that a go. Took me 3 attempts to get myself into it. The cognitive dissonance was very, very real. The thought of not needing any plant foods, not needing any vegetables, even the sort of the holy grail vegetables from a keto perspective, your cruciferous veg and everything like that. Like, 2 failed attempts, finally got my head wrapped around it, and I've been carnivore since June 2022, so just over a year and a bit now, and loving it, like really doing well on that.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, I was probably similar amount of time that we've been on carnivore actually.
Yeah,
It's about a year and a half that I've been doing it now. Um,
nice.
what was it that in your 2 failed attempts? What was it that went wrong? Did you just keep adding back in things that you shouldn't have?
Yeah, I just defaulted to sort of keto meals. Like, you had to have a bit of veg in there because you had it drilled in. If you've listened to anyone like Dr. Eric Berg, who will carry on about 7 to 10 cups of low carb veg a day, um, it was just right in the back there, and I couldn't get it out of my head. I couldn't get my head wrapped around the fact that you don't actually need it. It's not adding any nutritional benefit to you, really. Um, but yeah, sort of got into it from June last year, and haven't looked back. I've loved it.
Yeah, that is awesome. I think it's great to hear you talk about the other issues that cleared up with your eating as well, because
Yeah,
like you said, we don't realize what's causing them. You know, that one of the best things about eating this way is there's all these side effects you get that you never even
yeah,
realize. Like you said, the joint, I was a couple months into it and I suddenly realized the day after football, my joints don't hurt anymore. And you don't even realize all these things. And everyone's walking around unaware, like you said, with the gas and the bloated stomach and the cramps. Everyone's walking around. I was just saying, everyone just thinks that's how you feel after eating.
yeah. Exactly. I mean, you don't even realize it's an issue. It's not that you're aware there's an issue there. That was just, I thought that was digestion. Like, and it's so common as well across so many people that it really is a thing that everyone will joke about, everyone will talk about. It's just a part of normal everyday life. You don't realize that actually that's a symptom that something's not quite right. Your digestive tract isn't enjoying something in what you're eating, and you shouldn't feel like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Even just as it's funny that how many people I speak to who've done carnivore and say the exact same thing about gas. Like,
Mm.
everyone thinks it's just normal to have gas, and then you just don't have any, and you realize that that's how our body should be functioning. Like you say, a normal person going through life, you don't think that gas is a sign of something wrong, but it
Oh, the
is.
the best part is the myth that it's protein farts. Like, to be a bit crass. Like, I've coming from a very active background, I used to be big into all the supplementing and the gym and the protein powders and the shakes and all of this sort of stuff. And that stuff will give you gas at clear rooms. It's not the protein that's doing that at all, because I eat just meat and eggs now, a little bit of dairy here and there, and I've got no gas. Like
That's the
it's
It's the same with
yeah.
the bloatedness, isn't it? Because everyone's bloated after every meal, and you say, well, if you eat properly, you won't be
Mm.
bloated. But then they say, oh, well, when I have a roast dinner, I eat loads of meat and I'm bloated. So yeah, that's the vegetables and the potatoes doing that.
Yeah,
You
it's
just have
everything
the
mixing
meat,
with it.
and you're. I don't remember the last time I was bloated after a meal. I honestly can't remember. And some of the meals I've eaten have been pretty huge.
Mm.
I'm not a big guy, but I don't remember the last time I was bloated.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's very eye-opening when you get on the other side of it and you start to feel how your body would otherwise be. And the best part as well, it's not nice having gone through it, but the benefits of knowledge and experience that it's given me when I've fallen off the track, um, and feeling all the symptoms come back, and then to have them completely reverse again by getting back to clean eating, it's just that proof in the pudding that yes, it is diet that's causing this, and yes, if you clean your diet up, it goes away. It's not getting old. It's not just an everyday part of life. It's all in your nutrition.
That's it. It reinforces it, doesn't it? I've had one or two experiences the same. I've not, completely fallen off it at all, but now and again, I'll allow myself a little treat, with the family.
Yeah,
As obviously you said you've got wife and kids. I have two. We've got young kids. So now and again, but I do feel the difference. Even just like one, I'll be one treat and straight back on, and you feel it, and it does reinforce it. I feel like a lot of people when we tell them about all the benefits, I feel like a lot of people don't believe us. Um, and I feel like maybe when I was stuck in that world, potentially I wouldn't have believed you telling me all those
yeah,
benefits from food because we don't put two and two together, do we? Until you experience it yourself, it's kind of hard to understand how good it really is.
yeah. It's like trying to explain brain fog to someone who's never
Mm.
had the brain fog lift. Like,
Yeah.
I can't articulate it in a way that they'll understand. They have to experience it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, actually. I think it's Homestead How. I don't know if you've listened to him or he's an American guy.
No.
He was talking to a lady in the carnivore community who had really bad depression her whole life, and she said that when she started carnivore and she just woke up without all that stuff in her brain, she was like, "Hold on a minute, is this how everyone else is walking around?" Like
Mm.
that. She just thought it was normal to have that brain fog, to have all this anxiety, depression. Suddenly she cleared the food, and suddenly she had a clear mind, and she couldn't believe it. It's
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Palmer's work and the book
yes.
he's recently written, Brain Energy. Like that is it's scary, scary stuff, but also phenomenal. Like to know that there's there's something the individual can do within the control of their day-to-day normal routine that'll have such a profound impact over their mental health. Like mental health in this day and age. I mean, I'm 38 now, so I've sort of seen us come through from where it wasn't really spoken about. It was a bit of a taboo thing. You sort of like grown men don't cry, all that sort of stuff. To the point where now it's really at the forefront of everything, and it's all about okay, be open about your mental health, and that's all great stuff. But the one thing that's missing is what to do about it. And I come very much from the camp where me talking about it has limited benefit. If I'm having a tough time being able to bounce ideas off of mates and colleagues, like fantastic. Um, but the power of being able to do something in my dietary lifestyle that takes away the struggles, like that is something it should be shouted from the hilltops.
Yeah,
And it's just
absolutely.
not yet, but hopefully we'll get there.
Yeah, hopefully we're just stuck in that in the whole medical industry in that
Mm,
just treating symptoms, not causes, isn't it? It's just,
100%.
you're depressed. So like you say, talking to someone, letting your feelings out could help you in the moment. But if it's not doing anything about the cause of it, then it's not gonna be any different. They throw the SSRIs at everyone, which they're on,
Mm-hmm.
which also mess their body up even worse, meaning their diet
Yeah,
has an even worse effect on them, and it's not being cured. And again, it's another thing that sounds so crazy until you get into the space and you hear all these stories and you experience it yourself. To say changing your diet could cure your depression sounds crazy,
it does. Yeah,
but it's not crazy. It works.
exactly. And it's not just the diet. I mean, what Chris is pointing out about the mitochondria being,
Mm.
or dysfunctional mitochondria being the onset of most, if not all, mental illnesses like schizophrenia, chronic depression, autism. all sorts like that. That's controversial stuff, and I can see a lot of people getting upset about it. But when you look at the information he's unpacking, and it's not experimental work that he's done per se. He's unpacking experimental work that's been done since the early 1900s and putting the case for it. It's extremely compelling. And I think anyone who is eating this way, and not even necessarily carnivore, but anyone who's eating genuinely animal-based low carb will be able to tell within themselves the difference mentally that's made.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right about it's not just diet's one part of it.
Mm.
But there's more because, like you say, that I mean, cancer is the same kind of thing in that it's from mitochondrial health that it comes from, and
Yeah.
there's lots of different things affect that, like your stress and your sleep and getting enough sunlight and all these things. So yeah, the diet's one part which is great to optimize, but obviously you need to do the others. I mean, I found recently one of our eldest, as as kids do, he's been having some issues at night time with his sleep, and he's been up, and the last 4 weeks none of us have slept properly. And even though my eating's been on point, I feel a big difference
Yeah.
because my sleep's not been on point. And it's about, you got to get them all lined up, haven't you, to really get that optimal health.
Well, that sort of leads us into the book that I'm busy writing. So it's still work in progress, an extremely enjoyable one, which has caused me to really think about the nutritional sciences, and the problems that we have in that area. And we'll get into that in a bit. But to get to your point, there's three foundational pillars to metabolic health. Your first pillar is going to be your nutrition. Your second pillar will be sleep, as you've just mentioned. And your third pillar is going to be movement, so exercise. And you have to have all three. You can't sort of pick and choose one or the other. If you're lacking in any one of those three, your metabolic health suffers for it. And what I've come to understand, and the case that I'm putting forward in the book that I'm writing, is that it's metabolic health which sits at the foundation of non-communicable diseases, onset and reversal, autoimmune conditions, onset and reversal, and mental illness, onset and reversal. And it's because anything, whatever the cause may be, whether it's environmental, whether it's nutritional, whatever might be causing it, could be genetic, you could have a predisposition to something. The common pathway is the degradation of your metabolic health. And what I mean by metabolic health is, and it's important to be specific about this because it's a bit vague if you just go and Google metabolic health. Metabolic health is the sum of the chemical changes happening at a cellular level responsible for the extraction and provision of energy, the creation of genetic material required to facilitate your essential life functions, which keep all your body systems working: digestive, cardiovascular, respiratory, endocrine, so on and so forth. So it's all the activities at a cellular level that enable your body systems to work correctly. And when you look at all the diseases we're talking about in terms of lifestyle diseases, NCDs, autoimmunes, mental health, they're all diseases of one or more of those systems. So the cause is not necessarily nutrition, not all the time, often it is, but the pathway to onset and reversal is metabolic health. And that's why nutritional interventions are so powerful in improving management of the disease and potentially even reversal thereof, depending on where you've caught it and how clean your eating is.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I believe, as I said, I was speaking to someone the other day and talking about, similar things. And I said, I'm yet to see any kind of health condition that can't be, hugely improved, if not completely reversed through diet and lifestyle. Which obviously, is improving your metabolic health, as you said about. And I'm a complete believer in that, and that it's being caused by it. That you look at the amounts of illness and health conditions and obesity and everything there is, stuff that didn't used to be around hundreds of years ago, and the amount of it's got to be down to what we're doing, which is our food and also our lifestyle, which our
Yeah.
lifestyle's really unhealthy for humans too. And we're causing it to ourselves. And as you say, if that's the cause, reversing it is also going to be the cure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
tell us your book. Do you have a title for your book yet?
it's called Conquering King's Stomach.
Conquering Kings. Nice, nice.
It's
I like it.
yeah, yeah.
So
It's
what was it that kind of led you to start writing the book, or inspired you to do that?
I had surgery on my left knee this June. Um, Without going into all the specifics, it was a stage 1 ACL revision. So they've taken out an old failed ACL graft that failed back in 2004, along with all its metalwork and everything. So in the bone tunnel within my femur and my tibia, taken all of that out and then put bone plugs in to graft and form the foundation for my next ACL replacement, which I'll hopefully get in the new year. Um, and my recovery from that has been phenomenal. Like the speed with which the inflammation and everything reduced and allowed me to get back to functional movement training, regain full extension, flexion, and then get back to strength training has been absolutely mind blowing. I mean, I'm 16, basically 17 weeks in now. I've got the left leg back up to full strength. It matches the right leg. Fully functional again. I'm going surfing in a couple of weeks. So it was the start of that journey and seeing how well things are improving. But then also, I was looking at ways of potentially generating a side income, like a passive income. Um, and writing a book came up as one of the suggestions when I was having a look online to try and get ideas. And I thought, well, you know what? I've spent the last 5 years absolutely geeking out on all the science behind this, on all the conspiracy behind this, and we'll get into that in a moment. If you talk to the average person on the street, they don't have a clue that any of this is going on. Like they take at face value what they're told they should be eating by the authority figures that we have in place, and they don't see the wood for the trees. So maybe I could come at it from the perspective of a self-help book to try and unpack this in layman's terms, make the information available to the average everyday person who hasn't spent the last 5 years down all sorts of rabbit holes, give them a step-by-step sort of action plan to implement that knowledge and see turn around in their own metabolic health. So I decided, yep, I'll give that a go. And it's been a hell of a journey. It's taking a lot longer than I thought it would have because I'm having to constantly rewrite stuff. And I find what I'm doing is I'll write it how I understand it in the first instance and then read that back and then go, how would I explain that to someone who's never come across this? And then I'm having to go back and try and word it as if I was trying to explain it to my daughter, for instance. Mm-hmm. Not dumbing it down as such, but just making the information available in layman's terms without all the acronyms and jargon and everything that comes along with having spent time in the space.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's amazing that you're doing it. It's great to share your knowledge from what you found and from your experience. It's brilliant. And as you say, I can imagine that the hardest part is not just getting it down there, but as you said, getting it down in a way that someone can understand who's kind of coming into it blind. I imagine that's quite a challenge because especially, within this space, I'm always talking to people who are also part of it and we talk about stuff, but then if you talk about those same things to someone who's completely outside of it, you can't just speak about it how we are because they don't understand it. You've got to break it down. So yeah, I imagine that's been quite a challenge. How long has it been that you've been writing it now?
I think I started in late July, early August, so I'm a few months into it already. I've got a good few chapters done, and yeah, it's nice because I can't remember whose quote it is. So it's not my own saying. It's a saying I've come across from someone else before, but I can't remember who it is, so I can't give them credit. But it goes something along the lines of, if you can't explain something to a 10-year-old in terms that they'll understand, it's because you don't understand the topic. Mm. And I thought about that and I was like, okay, well, my daughter's 8. So let me write this as though I'm trying to explain it to people in her sort of age group within her demographic. And in doing so, I'm really having to make sure I understand the stuff. I can unpack it accurately and factually. It's a non-fiction book, so it's full of references, being as accurate as I possibly can. I'm not there telling a story. I'm laying out the facts in a manner that the average person can take and understand. And it's enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I have heard that that saying before that yeah, you've got to if you can't simplify it enough to explain to a child, then you don't fully understand it.
Mm,
I imagine that through the process of writing it, you've been expanding your own knowledge too, because as
100%.
it's I know that, to I think they say about, to really reinforce stuff into your brain, if you first you hear it and then you either teach it to someone or you write it down, and that helps it to go in. And I imagine you've been digging in even deeper into some subjects too.
Yeah, it's actually it's caused me to reconsider something, to realize that myself and societally we've become very, very tribal. Um, so at the beginning, I was sort of all about keto, and then all about carnivore. And what I've had to accept and realize, and then looking into it further, is it's actually a bit broader than that. And we'll sort of go down one rabbit hole quickly, and then I'll come back to this, and it'll make better sense. So if you take the work that Belinda and Gary Fettke have done in uncovering the root behind nutritional guidelines, the whole discipline of dietetics and nutritionists, and the influences at the heart of where that all came from, and the corruption and the vested interest, and how that whole area has been steered, I came to the point of sort of understanding why the human nutritional science space is so conflicting. I mean, it's like a minefield. You jump on Google Scholar or something and you start searching for stuff, and I can find articles that are both for and against any topic in any relation to human nutrition. And it's just an absolute minefield. Like trying to make your way through there and pose an argument. There's a counter argument to every argument you can pose, and it all comes down to who's funded the study, what were their vested interests, what did they have to gain by this outcome, and you start to unpack that and you go, well, the whole thing is corrupt. The whole thing is corrupt. And that led me down. I don't know if you're familiar with Professor Barkay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I stumbled across some of Bart's work, and Professor K articulated it in such a way that it helped me make my mind up. And it was basically take the whole of human nutritional science, throw it out the window, because when you compare it to animal nutritional science and you have a look at the veracity of the two side by side, human nutritional science can't even compete. And that's true for very, very good ethical reasons. I mean, we can't lock humans up who are genetically similar and control every aspect of their environment so that we know for sure experimentally what is cause and effect. Ethically, we can't do that. We can do that with animals, or whether we can or can't, we do it with animals. And so we've got very, very robust science in the animal nutrition space. We've got garbage in human nutritional space. The way around that is to look at anthropology, biochemistry, specifically human gastroenterology and hepatology, to understand what we are supposed to eat according to our biological design. And when you do that, and when you go down those sort of channels, it's absolutely clear that the human being, whether by design or by evolution, it doesn't matter which way you come at this, we are meant and geared up to eat animals primarily, but we also have the ability to use plants to stave off starvation in times of scarcity. Like there's just no way around it. Biochemically, and looking at the anthropology with stable isotope studies and stuff like that, it's absolutely clear. Like animal-based nutrition is what our entire system is geared up for. It's what it works best on. And you put that into practice, as you have, as I have, as many of our colleagues have, results speak for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I like you. I love listening to podcasts and learning. So I'm always listening to them, and you hear all the brilliant research on those topics. And as you say, you can't come to any other conclusion. Looking at human history, there's no other conclusion. The vegans can argue nowadays for some moral reason or something for humans to eat plants, but you cannot argue with the fact that humans have eaten, as you say, primarily animals. throughout our history, and that can't be argued. And so then, as you say, you have to look at it. I think it's I can't remember. I listen to so many people. It might be Dr. Shafee, who says that,
Mhm.
there's no other animal that has changed their diet, completely to eat something else. Like they have a specific diet that they eat, and that's what's healthiest for them. We're the only species that has decided to eat something completely different, and look what it's doing to our health. It's, as you say, the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And Dr. Chafee's argument is that if you go into the natural setting, there's not a single other species of animal on the planet anywhere where members of the same species in the same area thrive on completely different diets. There's just no example in the natural world, and human beings are no different. We have to eat in a way that caters to our biology, our physiological needs, and that is animal-based, low carb. It just is.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one of the arguments that actually swayed me to give carnivore a try when I first came across some of his stuff. Um, yeah, it's amazing. And then the other, like you talk about eating stuff that we weren't designed to eat. Our biggest problem at the moment as well is we're eating stuff that didn't exist 100 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
like, yeah, and people don't even appreciate that. People don't appreciate that just about everything that you buy from a convenience store outside of the meat aisle didn't exist 100 years ago. Certainly not in the form that you get it now. It's all
No.
going through factories. It's all being processed. It's all having additives and stuff added to it, preservatives. It's just, yeah, it's terrible, terrible, terrible stuff, man.
Yeah, even as you say, the vegetables and the fruit and the plants that people are eating, even, yes, as you said, throughout human history, at times we would have eaten plants to survive, and different things, but they are completely different to
Mm,
what people are eating nowadays. They're, as you said about stuff not existing, people think about, oh yeah, processed stuff, but no, like broccoli and, you know, kale and this stuff didn't even exist. It's all
yeah,
it's all been made. Like, people only think that applies to processed stuff. People don't understand, as you say. Like, people can't even believe it when you tell them that, 3 meals a day has not been what humans have eaten throughout time.
yeah,
People live in the now in their own little bubble, and they, anything outside, well, this is how we've done it my whole life, so this must be how humans have always done it. And as
yeah.
you say, once you start to look into our past and our history, it really opens up and reinforces, that what we're doing is the way it should be done.
Yeah, that's actually something that I cover in the book. I initially came at it from the angle of I wanted, you mentioned human beings shouldn't eat or haven't in the past always eaten 3 meals a day. And I was coming at it from the aspect of the majority of people's eating does not serve nutritional needs. It serves entertainment, pleasure, comfort, distraction. Those are the primary motivators for anyone's eating today, rather than nutrition. And I was coming at it from the perspective of, right, we need to get people to focus back on nutrition and ignore the rest. Interestingly, in doing it, I had to admit that that's not a good way to look at it, because when you look into human history, all of our recorded history, food and culture are so entwined that it has always been an entertainment, a comfort, a pleasure. Distraction, I think there's a strong argument against distraction outright. But so far as entertainment, comfort, pleasure, and the use of food, that's been there for all of our recorded history. It's so culturally important to us that you can't unravel it. It's just there. So I've had to adjust my approach and my understanding, and sort of come at it from a, okay, yes, we're going to do this in a social setting. It's important to us, and it's arguably our oldest tradition is to share a meal with others and to bond over that. Um, but you can at least make sure that what you're eating caters for your physiological needs rather than just what the taste is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like food being an event, a social event, is great, as you say. And like you said, going back through history, that's been a thing. But, you know, as you say, you still can concentrate on having the right nutrition. You can eat for nutritional purposes, but do it socially,
Exactly.
together. And I think a lot of people's eating now is not even as a social event, is it? people are at home on their own, stuff in their face with
Distraction.
unhealthy
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah, as a social event, it's it's absolutely fine. But as you say, nutrition is our mate. I was speaking about this with someone the other day, that the main reason for eating is for nutrition for our body.
Mm.
That's our main reason to eat. And as you say, we've completely forgotten that.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Oh, yeah. No, it's a difficult one to try and get across because the barriers in people's everyday understanding about nutrition and what to eat are such that, I mean, we've been so indoctrinated since when it was probably the 40s, the 50s. If we're going into the studies that sort of pointed the finger at sugar for cardiovascular disease, that were then covered up with counter studies pointing the finger at saturated fat, and that sort of kicked up the whole sort of crusade against animal fats. Um, Trying to explain that to people, you sound like you got your tinfoil hat on, and are deep down a conspiracy rabbit hole. But fortunately now, thanks to the good work of Belinda and Gary, like we've got access to those internal memos from the sugar companies, their own communications with each other, showing how they paid off those. I can't remember the professors' names, but there were 3 professors at Harvard who were paid off to falsify studies pointing the finger away from sugar in cardiovascular disease. And then there was Ansel Keys in the Seven Nations study. And now whether it's unfair because we don't have any proof that anyone paid him to falsify data like we do with the Harvard professors. And he's not here to defend himself, so we can't speak to motive. But whether it was by corrupt motives or whether it was by just not good practice, his omission of all of the other nations, because there were 23 in total, I believe, the omission of their data and the putting forward of just the 7 that sort of fitted the narrative of saturated fat causing heart disease is demonstrably wrong. We've got access to the data now through freedom of information requests, and you can plot it all out, and people have. I came across this on the Diet Doctor website. This was, I want to say, early 2020. I might be wrong, but I think they published it in 2018. And that's how long ago all of this sort of came out. But most people will probably listen to this podcast and go, what are you talking about? If they haven't spent time in podcasts like this, they won't know it because it wasn't mainstream. But you can plot out all these data and you go, there's absolutely no correlation between saturated fat and heart disease. None at all.
Yeah.
They're inconsequential.
And even in the nations he included, that was incorrect as well. Some of the diets that he said they had are completely wrong. There's a couple of them that he said had hardly any meat, and if you go to those islands and you speak to people who live there, they eat meat all the time. So yeah, I think it was I'd be erring on the side of for him being completely fraudulent. Where, like you say, whether he was paid or whether it was just a personal thing that he wanted those results and so he made it fit his results. I don't know, because I know there was a British professor who he was very who was the opposite side. He was trying to say sugar was the reason. I can't remember who it was, and he
I
had
know
a
who you're
kind
talking about.
he kind of had a personal vendetta with him. So whether it was even just that or whether he got paid off, I don't know. But yeah, the research is, as you said before, nutritional research is hardly worth the paper it's written on, unfortunately. And it's sad that, as you say, for at least 5 years, it's been public knowledge that those studies were fraudulent. Yet, have we seen any change on guidelines?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the first thing most people say to me when they first learn that I follow a carnivore dietary lifestyle is, aren't you worried about the cholesterol? And I'm like, well, no, I'm not worried about the cholesterol at all because the cholesterol's got absolutely nothing to do with cardiovascular disease. And then they look at you like you've grown 3 heads and are some kind of weird alien. But yeah, it doesn't.
No, I agree completely. It's one of the I've been diving even deeper into the whole LDL thing recently, because one of the guys I'm working with, he's a lean mass hyper responder.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been looking into some more of the. I don't know if you've seen the research that Dave Feldman's doing on it. He's like, yeah. So I've been looking a lot into that, which is really really interesting. And as you say, that research so far seems to be proving, and hopefully is going to prove that really it's nothing all to do with it, and that potentially the high LDL levels are actually maybe what humans should have, being
Yeah,
healthy.
yeah. Particularly, well, there's perhaps a case to be made about the dense LDL not being
Mm,
all that great, but otherwise, yeah, I think we get too caught up in the blood work, and I think blood work is a bit of an art form in and of itself, because unless, and I'll just use like in the health club that I go to, they've got one of these machines that sort of measure you internally and tell you what your fat percentage and everything is. And unless you're doing that so regularly that you get to separate out all the noise, you just can't really determine what's going on. And I come at that from the perspective. My day job is in mobile telecoms. I work for one of the biggest operators in the UK, and the projects and programs of work that I look after on board all the new technologies responsible for providing signal to users' handsets. And a big portion of that is testing and understanding what actually goes on. And you've got to get such robust sample data, like tons of sample data, to start to identify any sort of trend and weed out the noise before you can make any kind of recommendations. And I think the same is true for blood testing, because there's such variance based on all sorts of things that if you're not doing it regularly, same time of the day, every day, building up that sample data, you can't tell what's going on.
yeah, that's a great point, because just something you did an hour before can completely change your blood levels and your blood test.
Exactly.
So yeah, as you say, to get a full picture, you would have to do it regularly, same time, like first thing in the morning before anything or whatever, and we go back in history to humans who've survived and thrived for thousands or millions of years without doing any blood tests and without trying to
Yeah,
optimize
exactly.
certain things. They just ate what naturally was the right diet for them, and they were healthy. So I don't, unless you have health issues and you have things wrong, I agree with you that we don't really need to be getting too deep into that. I've never taken my blood. Kind of half of me kind of wishes I took my bloods before carnivore and after, just so I could see the difference, but I never took them before. I haven't took them since.
Mm.
If I'm doing the right things and I'm eating the right food and I'm looking after myself, I don't really have any reason to.
I've come to that conclusion. I started off getting my blood work done because I wanted to be what I saw as responsible with this dietary change, and I wanted to understand what's going on internally. And then I came up against some resistance from my local doctor. Obviously, being NHS, and then it's sort of like the unwritten rule, they're going to save money in the first instance. Like, is this absolutely necessary? Yes, no. If it's not, fob them off, tell them come back in 10 days if it's still going on. Like, and her, her response when getting me to explain why I wanted the blood work done was like, well, you're not eating in line with the dietary guidelines, so I can't do this. It's like, well, the dietary guidelines, like, you don't want to go down that rabbit hole with me, because we'll have a very long conversation and I'm not sure you'll enjoy it. But shouldn't the fact that I'm not following the dietary guidelines make you want to know what's going on? And I was flat out told, no, no, if you're not going to follow the dietary guidelines, I don't want to authorize the blood tests. I'm not going to do that. And I was like, well, fine. And then I've done without since, and I seem to be doing all right.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. I don't know if it's the same in other countries, but in the UK, you won't get a blood test until something's seriously wrong. That
Yeah.
they're not bothered about trying to catch stuff early. You have to be like seriously ill to get a blood test. I think really, if you wanted to monitor your bloods in the UK, you'd have to do it privately, really, as you
And
say,
it's
get nothing from
hellish
the
expensive.
doctors. Yeah.
Yeah.
Better off
So
just
yeah.
yeah, doing the right things, and your body will be fine. Again, I think it's Dr. Shafi who says that, he said, if I'm doing the right thing, if I'm eating the right diet that my body should have, doing the right things, then whatever my blood levels are what they should be.
Yeah.
So no need to worry about
Yeah,
it.
if your diet is appropriate, your activity is appropriate, and your sleep is good, then all your biomarkers will be whatever the physiological level should be for what's going on in your life.
Yeah,
You don't,
exactly.
yeah, it's not something to worry about.
Yeah. Definitely. So, hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into the show. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover on the podcast, or you'd like to appear on it, then please contact us at hwpoduk@gmail.com, on our website, which is healthwealthuk.com, or on any of our social medias, which are at hwpoduk. Please make sure you like, subscribe, share it with all your friends and family, and we will see you next week.